Join our commentators.
Welcome back to Donington. Thankfully, the weather holding good. Half a second separating the top five, but the three men are within a whisker of each other, first, second and third. Davey Lemon, third fastest, the man who finished third in the Northwest 200 in Ireland. He comes from Ballyherbert, County Down. Then it is Rob Orme, the man who finished second at Snetterton, but the man on pole position from County Antrim, Robert Dunlop. So two men from the province on the front three. Now, this is pretty hectic stuff. 40 riders, just look at them grouped up. As they rush down towards Redgate, it must be pretty crowded. I wonder what they're thinking. Davey Lemon sitting there, 26 years of age, very, very pensive, but he had a great result, as I said, in the Northwest 200, behind Joey Dunlop, who's on pole position here. He won the race. Robert Dunlop, I beg your pardon. Brother Joey was second, Davey Lemon was third. Rob Orme from West Hallam in Derbyshire, 26 years of age, would very much like to win the 125cc Supercup Championship this time round. He didn't win it last year. That went to Ian McConaughey, who is away today on Italian Grand Prix duty because we clashed today with the Italian GP, as you've already seen. But the pole position man, Robert Dunlop, such a tiny man, and yet he rides that Norton Rotary as well, and he'll be riding that in the Isle of Man for Norton. And when he's not riding that, then he's on the 125 Honda. Hectic, as I say, 40 of them in that dash down. Now, on the first lap of the 750s, Jamie Whittam had a look with his on-bike camera. Now, let's just see the sort of thing that they go through as the riders leave the start. Getting away down towards Redgate. Now, Steve Parrish is alongside me, of course. Steve, what's going through a rider's mind? Just how close is it? Is it as close as it looks?
Yeah, very much so. It's quite a terrifying time. It's the worst part of the race because you're desperately keen as you see all those riders bunching up to get a good line into the corner. A brave man will go round the outside, as has done Roger Burnett at that point. You just saw him pass Jamie Whittam. But it is so close, and you have to be so reliant upon the rider beside you not making a mistake, because he can just skittle you down at that point. You see Roger Burnett also just nip through past Carl Fogarty. But it is crucial that you rely upon your teammates, or your competitors, in fact, out on the track.
Well, that really brings me to the next question. I mean, it's national racing at the highest level. Can you assume that everybody out there knows what they're doing and nobody is going to sideswipe you?
Well, the Supercup series is a very professional series. The majority, we do have the best riders in the UK out there, but a rider can sideswipe you and it can be a complete accident. You might have a slight amount of brake fade, there could be something wrong, his tyres not warm enough, because the fine line between going as fast as you possibly can on that first lap and then not having enough grip and falling off is a very, very sharp knife edge.
Well, if we understand that it's a crucial time, I mean, what is the problem then as Jamie Whittam seems to be dropping back? What do the others have? And it's a silly question. What do the others have that are ahead of him?
I can tell you exactly. Jamie Whittam doesn't have tyre warmers. All the guys on the front row of the grid, in fact, the front two rows, I think, apart from Jamie, have tyre warmers which keep their tyres up to temperature, so they can afford to just go into that first corner a bit faster because the tyres are up to temperature and have the grip. Mick Grant's going to have to invest in some.
Well, back to where we are at the moment with the 125s. What about tyre warmers on the 125, Steve? Is it something they use?
I'm led to believe that Rob Orme on the front row is the only person that does use these tyre warmers. That's really what the warm-up lap was always designed for, but there's never quite enough time or quite enough distance to put the temperature in that you require. That's why these type of electric blankets, you could nearly say, they wrap around the tyres. They have elements in there that bring the temperatures right the way up. A
lot of the technology spilled over from Formula One car racing into bikes. Now, similar sort of setup there, the chap weaving from side to side, obviously doing the same sort of thing, trying to warm his tyres up. It's vital that the tyre is warm, and in particular the front one going into Redgate at the end of the start-finish straight. So it'll take a lap or two to really get the tyres into the right temperature, but that lap, obviously, as Steve Parrish said, designed to get them some way there. So the front row again, Steve Thompson, fifth fastest. Then it's Chris Palmer, number 19, Davey Lemon, Rob Orme, and pole position man, Robert Dunlop. Dunlop's sponsor, John Kennedy Plant Sales, they are very big in earth-moving equipment and all that sort of thing. Well, an awful lot of money has gone into Dunlop's 125cc Honda. 12 laps then, the distance, the full race distance, 30 miles. The 125s are go, and a little flick of the hand from Chris Palmer there just to adjust the visor, I think, going in. But a great start by number 9, Steve Thompson, a super dive into the first turn. So Thompson from the outside, fifth fastest, made a dash for the front. Well, they're all safely round. Steve threading their way down through Craner curves. What sort of speed on the 125 through here?
It's actually pretty fast down through Craner curves on a 125, somewhere over 100 miles an hour. It's quite unbelievable that these 125cc machines, which is a very minute engine, have been clocked at over 136 miles per hour. In fact, Mr. Dunlop was clocked at the Northwest 200 in Ireland last week at 136 miles per hour, which is quite phenomenal for a 125.
Race leader then, number 9, Steve Thompson it is, leading the race. Waiting to pick up the rest of them, but Thompson had a super run from the outside. He's 37 years of age, a lot of experience, and rather like the world of sidecars, you tend to find that some of the 125 men are a little more senior in years. There are two ends of the scale, if you like. There are the youngsters who come in at the bottom to cut their teeth in road racing. They climb on a 125. And then you have the older men who are maybe fairly small in stature, aren't really big enough to get to grips with the 750. Added to that, the cost of 125 racing, very much less than its 750cc or even 600cc counterpart. So that is why we have a man out the front, 37 years of age, an engineer, came back last year after a 6-year layoff. So that layoff obviously didn't do Steve Thompson any harm at all. He's out there in front, number 9. So almost a new name for us, Steve.
Yeah, I think it probably is. In actual fact, he was the 50cc British champion some 5 or 6 years ago. So he knows a lot of these riders are engineers because it's down to the preparation of your machine. And if you're not riding for a professional team, you do the work yourself. And the majority of these riders that we're looking at here today have all built these engines. The preparation that goes into it is quite unbelievable. The hours that are spent getting ready for this. And Steve Thompson has obviously spent many, many late hours burning the midnight oil, getting this machine to tip-top conditions, because they are so all very equal. They're all Honda 125 machines.
Well, that's Davey Lemon tucked in behind Robert Dunlop there, but race leader number 9, Steve Thompson from Ashby-de-la-Zouch, just down the road from the circuit. Number 4 in your picture, Robert Dunlop, the winner of the Snetterton round. There's Davey Lemon right behind him, 3rd fastest in qualifying here. So Davey Lemon tucking himself down behind the Perspex bubble. But look at the lead Thompson's got. Quite extraordinary, really, that the bikes, just about all of them, without exception, are 125cc Hondas. It strikes me that Thompson's bike has just got a little edge somewhere, and quite what that could be, I don't know. Rob Orme is in 2nd place. Dunlop has moved up into 3rd. So number 2, Rob Orme from West Hallam in Derbyshire, has gone into 2nd place. He's taken Robert Dunlop with him.
With these relatively low-powered machines, it's vitally important down the straightaways, the head under the screen, aerodynamics as best as you possibly can. Your arms and knees must be tucked in. Rob Orme has a glance over his shoulder. In fact, Rob Orme was told off by his team manager at Snetterton 3 weeks ago for lifting his head and looking at his pit board too much, so they've now fitted him an onboard timekeeping machine so that he doesn't have to look at his pit board so much.
Rob Orme then in the Team Mobil 1 Coleman livery, the red, white and blue of Rob Orme's bike, very well turned out. He was always known for preparing the machine immaculately when he was under the Derek Clark colours, but now he's under the Mobil 1 camp and looking very clean indeed, and he's closing down the lead that Steve Thompson has opened up. So Thompson from Orme, then it's Robert Dunlop. In 4th place it's Chris Palmer, then it's Davey Lemon, and in 6th place it's number 35 Mark Bingham. There's Chris Palmer, number 19 from Carlisle in Cumbria. The race leader now is coming under enormous pressure. So 37 years of age then, Thompson from just down the road is really having a problem. They're right on his back wheel and threatening to pass him at any moment. This is going to put the pressure on, and it will tell us whether Steve Thompson is up to it, quite frankly.
Yes, he'll possibly be getting signals from his pit board. I haven't yet seen him look over his shoulder. It's probably a good idea that he hasn't, because looming in very closely is Rob Orme and Robert Dunlop, and these are two very experienced men. Robert Dunlop looks for the inside line. No, he decides that he'll leave it for another corner or even another lap.
Thompson then still, but the gap now down to something like 6 lengths. And look at Rob Orme closing down on the brakes, but look at Dunlop. Dunlop just holding off to the very last split second, and he gained yards down there towards the Melbourne hairpin. They're exiting the hairpin up through the gearbox as hard as they can go towards Goddard. Number 9 then, Steve Thompson. And right on the inside, Rob Orme, number 2. Orme's going to make a bid any moment, and he's well aware that he's got to get past Thompson and get away from Dunlop. Dunlop is the threat, he's looming large, but these 5, 3 of them, then a gap. Then it's Chris Palmer, number 19, and Davey Lemon hasn't given up the chase in 5th. Orme on the inside. We're in for another fairing-bashing 1-2-5 race, I suspect, Steve.
Yeah, I'm sure we are. Robert Dunlop has put the fastest lap in, but it can't be a great deal faster than neither Rob Orme's or Steve Thompson's, because there's not been a great deal of change in the distance apart. But Rob Orme will be extremely keen. Robert Dunlop goes through on the inside as Rob Orme hesitated, wasn't sure whether to pass Joe. Robert Dunlop said, here we go, and he's nipped through into 2nd place. So now if he can make a break past Steve Thompson, it'll give him a chance to gain a bit, but no, it's not to be said. Rob Orme takes another look on the inside. This is Robert Dunlop as he takes late on the brakes as they go into the old hair. He just drifts through, runs out wide. There's nothing at all that Rob Orme can do. There's no way he can pull the bike in time. He has to say, thank you very much, and let him go.
We won't ask about ethics, Steve, but if you make a dive for the inside like that, obviously there was enough room, and if the rider on the inside happens to drift wide, then out of self-preservation, I presume, the rider on the outside has to go with it.
Yeah, it's for safety reasons alone, and Robert, as we look, Robert Dunlop goes through. Another nice manoeuvre on the inside, the drift wide. Unlike in motor car racing, in motorcycles, you have to have a bit more ethics because it can hurt if you don't.
Interesting point. Just look at that. Steve Thompson on the inside showing Robert Dunlop his front wheel. Well, we're seeing a great ride from the Ashby de la Zouche rider. Thompson is really up with the very best 1-2-5 men now in the UK. 9th in last year's championship after that 6-year layoff. Well, he wasn't at all rusty. He came back in great form, and here he is now dueling with the very best of them. Thompson's now got Rob Orme with him. Davey Lemon is now up to 4th place. So Davey Lemon has got past number 19, Chris Palmer. Rob Orme is having a go. He's taken the wind out of the sails now of Steve Thompson down into 3rd. Thompson using all the track and more, running a little bit wide. Number 4, the race leader, Robert Dunlop. 30 years of age, Dunlop. He is one of the specialists of the true road racing. Loves the Isle of Man, loves the true road circuits in Northern Ireland, where they have curbs and trees and keep left signs. Obviously, he learns to treat those with a great deal of respect. And riding here beautifully, and his size lends him to the 1-2-5. It's really all about size and power to weight, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. As we've spoken before, it's not just the weight, it's actually, you say, the physical side. If you can get behind the streamlining, can make up to 5-6 miles an hour difference at the end of the straightaway. But Robert Dunlop is unbeaten this year in the 1-2-5 class, and he'd be extremely keen, and he looks very promising to keep that record at the moment. But Rob Orme saying no, he's not, because he takes a look on the inside, but I don't think he can do it. No, he can't. Rob Orme's closed in on under braking. Rob might be thinking, well, I'm just going to show my front wheel a few times and make him a little nervous and try and make a surge on the last remaining few laps.
Well, this 1-2-5 race now has settled into a pattern which looks as though, as Steve Parrish said, Rob Orme might just be casing the joint, as it were, and getting the measure of Robert Dunlop, because Dunlop stole the march on him at Snetterton and took the win, and with it the 20 points. Rob Orme had to settle for 2nd place and 17 points on that occasion. This is how they stand in the championship. The faller there, number 62, is David Fabian. Picks himself up. Under the new regulations, he cannot receive assistance, so he would be technically disqualified if he had a restart to get off again. So Fabian then, number 62, out of the race, but back at the front, the battle is raging fast and furious. It occurs to me that number 9, Steve Thompson, might just slip back now into the clutches of Davey Lemon. Yeah,
I don't think he had a chance really of competing with these two leading contenders. We know very well that Robert Dunlop and Rob Orme are possibly the fastest riders on the circuit. They've got very well prepared machines, but all credit to Steve Thompson. He did a great job of holding that lead position for the first 3 laps.
Well, just to give you a comparison, albeit maybe an unfair comparison, but the lap record round here is held by Hans Spahn, the Dutchman, and that was in the Grand Prix of last year. He went round at 1 minute 44.3, and Dunlop has done a best so far. In fact, Orme has just done a 1:46, so they're a little over 2 seconds outside the true factory Honda of Hans Spahn. That isn't too bad.
No, it's not too bad at all, because bearing in mind the factory Honda produces a nearly 5 or 6 horsepower more, which doesn't sound a lot of power, but when we're only talking about between 38 and 45 brake horsepower, it's a considerable advantage on these very light, small machines.
So no mean achievement then by Robert Dunlop, an almost casual look over the left shoulder, a prolonged glance back at Rob Orme, as much to say, well, I know you're there, but there's nothing you can do about it. Rob Orme on the Team Mobil 1 Coleman obviously has other ideas, because he's right in the slipstream, and if you look, he's tucked down right behind Robert Dunlop now. He's coming out of the slipstream on the outside. I'm getting so excited it's confusing me at Redgate, but Dunlop had the inside line drifting wide. I think, Steve, that Rob Orme has got the measure of him.
I think he probably has, because there was no way he was about to ride around the outside of Robert Dunlop at Redgate corner. He was just letting Dunlop know he was there, as I said, try and keep him on edge, make him a little nervous. And I think we'll see, at the moment, he's feeling quite content there. He's watching what Robert's doing, he's checking his lines, but it's going to be a different matter, a lap or two from the end.
Rob Orme, then, you're with him now, 27 years of age, a professional road racer, as I say, from West Hallam in Derbyshire, not too far from the circuit here at Donington. Has had a fairly spectacular career, most of it on small machinery. Thompson still in third. Bingham has moved up into fourth place. Now that's incredible, and he's brought Stanley with him, so Chris Palmer slipped down to sixth now.
In fact, David Lemon, who was up there in third position, has had a tumble at the S's. That's brought Bingham up, but no problem whatsoever there at the S's. Plenty of runoff area, and he's up, but unfortunately unable to continue the race.
Dunlop and Rob Orme, then, these two out on their own now, just flashing past in the back of the picture was Steve Thompson, who, I have to say, if he keeps riding at this pace, has got that third place in his pocket. Oh, what have I said? He's down. That's Steve Thompson, the third place man, doesn't have it in his pocket because he's dropped it, and he is furious with himself. Coming down to the Melbourne hairpin, Thompson is out of third place. What more can I say, Steve?
Yeah, I think we should keep quiet from now on, Barry, because that was very unfortunate. He had a very safe third position with 5 laps remaining now. I think we're shortly going to see Rob Orme winding the wick up.
On lap 8 of 12. So the gap now, and we have a new third place man, and it's number 35, Mark Bingham. So Mark Bingham has really been handed third place on a plate. He fought his way up through the order past Chris Palmer, and number 25 is Barry Stanley, who was also well placed in the championship after the first round. So Barry Stanley's in 6th place. Bingham's not in the top 10, so this will do his tally the world of good if he can grab third. Meanwhile, the race for first and second, Robert Dunlop and Rob Orme, and I really don't know which one of these is going to have the advantage. There seems to be nothing at all in the bikes, and if anything, I suspect Rob Orme has a little bit more to give on the brakes.
This is really the only battle that's going on during the race. Rob Orme is, I think, sizing up Robert Dunlop, but then we never know, and nobody knows apart from Robert himself, as if he's got a little bit left. He might have been slackening the pace, thinking, I'll fox Rob Orme into thinking he's got the race. So there's a lot of tenacity goes on in a race like this, a great deal of thought and a lot of foxing around that a rider can do. He can play around, he can brake early, let another rider think he's got the edge, but we're not going to know, I think, until we see the last lap and even the last corner.
Dunlop then just dragging what he's really got to try and do, and I'll maybe presume what's going through his head. If he can stretch the gap to get Rob Orme out of his slipstream, and it's so often the case when you see these 125s making a sprint for the finish, you see them trying to break the slipstream. This then is the battle for third and fourth. Number 35, that's Bingham, and Barry Stanley, number 25, is making inroads into that third place and looking as though he's going to nick it from him going down in towards Redgate. So Stanley, 6th place, I remind you, after Snetterton. So he indeed is becoming a force to be reckoned with in the world of 125cc Supercup racing. Mark Bingham, however, number 35, the man in yellow, is tucking down behind that little Honda as best he can to shake Barry Stanley off, but it's all to no avail. Stanley is really there close. What a great ride by Mark Bingham. Virtually another new name for us to conjure with, Steve. They keep popping up. This is the growth area, the 125s. It's where the new talent seems to emerge.
Yes, it's possibly the cheapest class to get in at, and it's the least powered, so I think it's in some ways the safest way. Nobody wants to be spending thousands of pounds to initially get into motorcycle racing, so this is a great class, and it really is bringing some riders along. Because the bikes are so equal, then you can see who is the faster rider.
Well, a real challenge there by Barry Stanley, but Mark Bingham, who had what appeared to be marginally the slower of the two bikes, outrode him on the brakes, and he's going to have to do it again at the Melbourne hairpin. He sits up round the outside, goes Barry Stanley. Mark Bingham, has he got the power to drive up the hill? He goes wide, so a real tussle now going on for third and fourth. What a pity these aren't in the same frame or on the same sort of section of the track as the battle between Dunlop and Orme at the front, because it is very, very similar, and we would really have a fantastic four-man scrap. Mark Bingham then, number 35. Barry Stanley, number 25, still with him. Down at Redgate, knee on the tarmac, as hard over as they can go. These two are just about on the limit. This is bringing out the best possible from these two now, side by side. Just look at Stanley. He doesn't know which side to go. He keeps trying the outside, the left, and then the right. Down through Craner Curves towards the old hairpin. Steve, a super move.
Yeah, oh, well, it was a super move. He got the drive out of the old hairpin, but unfortunately, he had his nose chopped off because number 35, Mark Bingham, just cut the corner as they went under Starkey's Bridge and left him nowhere to go. But that's all part of racing, and you learn tricks of the trade.
Third and fourth places then, as the battle's still going on at the front, but look at Barry Stanley. Desperation stakes almost, sweeping round the outside, and his bike does seem to have just a little bit of edge. Watch if he comes out of the slipstream. He does, he's on the inside. Can he do it on the brakes? Yes, he does go through on the brakes, up into third place. So Barry Stanley, number 25, grabs third. Mark Bingham isn't finished yet. We'll get a repeat performance. Look at that on the inside, down towards the Melbourne hairpin. So really dueling. One of them has to give here. Surely this can't go on at this pace.
Well, it does look that way, but certainly Mark Bingham there had a great drive out of the corner. Thought he could get a run to the Melbourne loop, but it wasn't possible. But yeah, pretty impressive stuff. Mark Bingham is riding the wheels off of that bike.
And there it is. I was about to tell you, but the picture tells the story. Rob Orme, number 2, has moved to the front. Now, has he timed it correctly, or does Robert Dunlop have something up his sleeve with which to retaliate? Dunlop is making himself as small as possible behind the fairing of that little Honda, and he really is throwing everything at Rob Orme. But they are on the penultimate lap. Look at that, a hand in the air. Dunlop said, hey, what are you doing? I had the line. Why did you shut me down so tight?
Actually, I've got a feeling that Robert was apologising because he stormed through on the inside there. I might be totally wrong, but he went through on the inside, and I don't think there was any way he could stop. But I was just about to say that I think Rob Orme took the lead a little too early, because there's no way that you're going to suppress Robert Dunlop. He's charging, but now it gives Rob Orme another chance to get back, and he does on the inside, breaks in late. Robert Dunlop will be holding back now to get a fast drive out of the S's to see if he can pick up some speed down the straight here and get him on the inside once again at the loop.
What immediately occurs to me watching these two tacticians at work is just how skillful and how precise racing a 125 is. There is absolutely no room for error. Every single movement of the body, or twitch of the elbows, or slight under rev of the engine, miss a gear, Steve, it's all over, isn't it?
Yeah, if you miss a gear, the race is over for you nearly, because you lose so much ground, so much time, especially now. I'm sure Rob Orme would be very happy if Robert Dunlop was to miss a gear, but I don't think that's going to be the case. This is now the last lap of the race, and I really would like to say who's got this race.
Well, we have two battles. We have Rob Orme leading into the last lap. So, with a little over half of the Donington Park 2.5 mile circuit to do, Rob Orme is leading his rival from the last round. This will, if it finishes this way, the points will be even. That will be a win and a second place apiece. But Robert Dunlop knows that he's got 20 points to go for. 17 is what he'll get if he stays where he is.
Oh, and Robert's looking, he's gone for the inside as he did on the lap before as they come into McLean's. Yes, he's gone through. This time I don't think there'll be any time to wave his hand and say, excuse me, because he's through. But Rob Orme got the drive out of the corner. It's all going to be going into the S's. Who can get on the inside line as they enter the S's is who's going to win the race, in my feeling.
Well, the battle for third and fourth is still going on, and Barry Stanley, number 25, has moved up to third. But this is where the action is now. This is what all the rushing is about, because there are 20 points at stake, not to mention the money. £400 will go into the pocket of the winner, and it's Orme at the S's. Rob Orme sprinting down now towards the Melbourne Heaven. Look at Robert Dunlop out of his slipstream. Orme is weaving all over the track, trying to break the toe. They're side by side. They almost touch. And it's Dunlop on the brakes. Has Rob Orme got an answer for that one? He keeps it as tight as he can, gets the little Honda on the power. But the Mobil 1 Team Coleman man is going to have to settle for second unless he can pull something out of the bag at Goddard's. And Rob Orme is on the inside, and they're both down. Rob Orme went too hard on the front brake. And they're pushing now to get it finished, because this could go to Barry Stanley. Barry Stanley could win this one. Rob Orme has restarted, has cut across the grass. Robert Dunlop, too, is getting the bike sorted out. Well, what an absolute fiasco at the end of the 125s. They're both a little bit battered. Now, will Robert Dunlop forgive him for that one?
Well, I think there's going to be a few words to be said in the paddock. Rob Orme, I must say, had charged into that corner, hard on the brakes, just lost the front end. Neither of those two are going to be very happy people. Look at that battered bike, but fortunately it seems that both riders are perfectly okay.
That looks as though that might be an injured collarbone. I'm looking at the way Robert Dunlop, and let's watch and see if the shoulder goes down heavily. Watch Orme's front wheel. He comes in on the front brake, locks up the front. There it's going now. Too hard. Dunlop is already charging into the turn, and it's gone. Now watch Robert Dunlop off the bike and onto the tarmac, and that looks suspiciously like that might have been a collarbone he was nursing. But he's won the race. That is incredible. Poor Robert Dunlop. He had his world swept from underneath him, and he landed on the grass. There's the damaged John Kennedy Plant Honda. And to all intents and purposes, Dunlop got the win from Orme. I can't believe it. After that, they finished first and second. Then Bingham, Barry Stanley, Chris Palmer, and Ray McComb. And that is unofficial, because we don't know what will happen after that fiasco. So Robert Dunlop and Rob Orme were disqualified. This is the replay of exactly what happened. Rob Orme, number 2, is on the inside. Robert Dunlop thought everything was safe and sound. The pair of them tumbled. And under new legislation this year, if the rider parts company from his bike, then he is not allowed to remount and continue in the race without having the machine re-scrutineered for mechanical defects. So those two riders were disqualified. That'll upset them, because they were joint leaders of the championship had the position stayed as they were. So this man, Mark Bingham, number 35, got the win, and that makes a whole new different scenario to the overall standings. So there you have it. Stanley, Palmer, Robert Dunlop on 20, Mark Bingham joint, Rob Orme joint with Jimmy Brown pushed down. So Barry Stanley, cock a hoop I would think, now leading the championship after 2 rounds.